You're tuned into the Unnecessary Harm podcast, where we drill down on issues of substance use and its cultural impact. Your host, Shane Varcoe, Executive Director of the Delgado Institute, with over 40 years experience in youth and community work and a passion for building resilience.
Hey, welcome back to the Unnecessary Harm podcast. Good to have you with us again. And for those chiming in for the first time, welcome on board. Good to have you with us. And if you want to subscribe to our UHP newsletter, please go to LinkedIn, Shane Varcoe, Executive Director, and you can sign up with that. Today's guest describes himself as a transformational coach who helps individuals develop resilience and achieve personal and professional excellence. He is known professionally as the Exceptionality Catalyst and draws from his own journey of overcoming addiction to mentor leaders and professionals in building exceptional teams and stronger mindsets. After battling a hidden addiction to pornography and compulsive behaviour for over 15 years, he turned his life around through mindset work, emotional healing, and self-leadership. He's the founder, obviously, of the Exceptionality Catalyst, where he focuses on empowering others to transform their lives by taking charge of their mindset. Very important. He has a diploma in psychology. He's a certified cognitive behavioural therapist, as well as an alcohol and other drug counsellor, amongst other things. Pjero Mardesic, welcome to the Unnecessary Harm podcast.
Thank you, Shane. I really appreciate the time to be here today and share my story and talk to you about unnecessary harm and obviously addiction.
Yeah, beautiful. Look, normally we jump in with a little bit of a get-to-know-you chat before we start and kind of warm up and that sort of bit, which is fine. We normally do that. But today I want to go a different way because I really want to drill down quickly, and hopefully as we do that, your journey and will unfold and people get to hear you and see you and taste a little bit of you that comes out without the sort of, the coiffed, web page blurb, which will also, we're necessarily important. But boundaries is a big issue for us here at Delgado Institute. We speak about it a lot. Boundary breaching, boundary collapses, non-existent boundaries, all those kind of things. And especially when it comes to substance use, which is our primary wheelhouse, but not our only wheelhouse, is a really big issue. And, of course, that lets in a whole bunch of other things. And today we want to sort of explore that in conjunction with your story. But you've spoken on this in some of your presentations online, and it's really important that we look at this boundary thing. But I really want to jump in with a personal, really hit this personally, because what boundaries, were breached in your world at the age of 14? Because that was a starting point for you, wasn't it?
The story actually began at 10 when I actually stumbled across the pornography when my father was watching. That was at 10. I didn't really understand it as an addiction till about 14. But as you said, we'll chat about that. But when you talk about what boundaries were breached, I just want to start with this sort of statement from my education and my research and my knowledge, and that is a boundary is for me to stay in, not necessarily for you to stay out. An agreement is when we both agree, this is my boundary, and then the expectation is let's not cross it. So I just wanted to elaborate on boundary, expectation, and agreement.
Yeah, of course.
Because then that can frame a lot for how it was even breached or even was even spoken about, because the next thing we've got is the biggest problem of unheard expectations, which is an agreement that I never heard about, or I didn't even know about your boundary because you didn't even tell me about it, right? So what boundaries were breached at the age of 14? Well, if we go back, very, very important point. So what boundaries were breached, I guess you could say, at the age of 10? My father never, ever spoke to me about sex, about pornography, about women. And now that he's passed away, I don't even get to have that conversation. So first of all, I wouldn't even say it was a boundary that was breached. I would say that it wasn't even a conversation, and that's a problem in its own. So there's two sides. There's what was said and there's what wasn't said.
Very important distinction. I think now this is where we're talking about boundaries. I'll frame it up, from my perspective. I love your take on this. But you're ostensibly got an adult man, a father, who doesn't clearly, if he's looking at pornography with his 10-year-old son, can see it. He's clearly got some issues, and I'm not here to make pejorative remarks about your dad, but clearly from a boundary setting, boundary understanding perspective, he's already in a place where he doesn't get it. He is engaged in a mechanism or a process as a perceived adult, because if you're an adult there, I'm 18 plus, I get to do what I want. He's looking at very harmful material for him, let alone a child, and he's doing it in a proximity to a child that can access that. So he's already in a place where he doesn't comprehend the very things you've talked about, what he's letting in. But if he doesn't understand what he's letting in or letting out, he certainly can't translate that into someone else. So tell me about, without going into, again, all the grotty details, because you and I had a similar experience. I was exposed to some pretty horrendous porn. This is in the day, and I'm a lot older than you are, this is in the day where there was no media, but this was horrendous porn. As a 11-year-old myself, by a shopkeeper who's a pedophile. And I did not know any of this at the time, but that experience seemed weird to me until I hit puberty, and then it just lit up in all sorts of places in my life and created all sorts of havoc in a way that because I had a boundary breach biochemically, right, and certainly socially and emotionally, that I was not aware of until I hit puberty. And then that all of a sudden became an issue, but I won't go down that road. But that's a very similar experience in that sense. But what else was going on? And obviously, Dad didn't speak to you about sex. Clearly, that was an issue for him, and perhaps he wasn't spoken to about that either. But was in your dad's setting and in your home setting, was that a problem, or did you see it as a problem for your mum as well? Was she aware of this?
This is going to evolve into such an amazing conversation. Even what you've said, there's so many things there that we can pull apart. First of all, his lack of self-awareness. So what conflict did he go through to understand that? Did he even actually have an understanding? His father died in the war, so no, he was never even spoken to about either. So he had no understanding. Back in those days, as you would know, yes, I mean, I'm 43, so I'm not going to predict your age, but you don't look much older than me, maybe, 50. But majority of those people didn't even understand what a boundary fucking was. Like, let's be real. Like, boundary is such a new word in the psychological world, even about all this kind of seriousness, right? So like, he didn't even understand what a boundary was. What was that? Like, if he's just sitting there at night, and I'm not trying to justify this on his behalf, but I'm picturing it from this level, and this is from education now, not from when I was a kid. So I'll get back to that bit. But you think about it like this. He was working 12-hour shifts in a mine on three-week rotations, right? Day shift, night shift, afternoon shift. We all know what those were back in those days. So he would just come home from work completely exhausted probably, but that was life back then. And he was just numbing out in front of the TV. I talk about it now with other tradies. They're just numbing out. They've had a big day. They've got to put up with the kids, whatever it may be, and they're just numbing out in front of the TV. Now, did he realise that there was a breach of boundary back then? No. He was just watching TV. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was well and truly asleep. He didn't think. And then all of a sudden, I've come out of my bedroom because obviously I woke up to some weird noises and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know what they are. I was 10, right? I've walked around the corner. He's changed the channel because obviously he's heard my door open. So he's just gone, oh, I've looked at the TV and I'm going, he's watching the soccer. Okay, fine, right? I go to the toilet and I'm just like, it didn't sound like the soccer. So anyway, I've snuck out. I've pressed the button to make it look like I've gone to the toilet. I've snuck out and I've just peered around the corner and all of a sudden to me, I'm just like, oh, what's that? And that noise then alerted him and he then changes the channel again. As I walk through, he's just said to me, don't worry about this, son. These are just naughty adult movies. Go back to bed. Now, in that moment, my little brain said to me, naughty people can hang out together. Because then if he likes naughty people, maybe that's why I'm a naughty kid, right? So there's a little bit of the story.
Even though it was intentional, it's instructional.
Right. Right. So there's a little bit of the story of how it came across. Now, there's plenty more to add to that. But if we go back to exactly what you were saying, like, was it actually a boundary breach? Did I cross his boundary? Was he watching TV? Like, did I not know to go past him while he was doing his thing at night time? Did he cross mine? Were these videos inside the house where I had access to them? Yes. Did he hide them? No, they were just under the couch. They were just there for all to see. There was no, he did not know. He didn't think to himself that my 10-year-old son, he didn't have the awareness to go, my 10-year-old son might start looking for these things.
Yep. And I think that goes to some presuppositions, which we could go down that rabbit hole. I don't want to do that today because that's a big conversation, as you've just indicated. But we're starting with some a priori assumptions here. I mean, what is it about my life as an adult? And this is one of the issues around the drug space, which we are constantly confronting. This concept of the adult now. The adult gets to do whatever the adult determines is okay. I'm a grown-up. I get to make grown-up choices. Well, in what matrix do you make those grown-up choices? I mean, what are the informing agencies, informing elements of that decision-making process? What a priori assumptions are you making about adulthood? And again, if that, as you said, Dad's grown up in an environment where it's work and play. It's, to use Stephen Covey's quadrants, it's the urgent and immediate quadrant to the chill out and veg out quadrant. You just jump between the two, and the strategic quadrants are ignored, and the values-based quadrants are ignored. Now, when it comes to a culture that is perceived, whether it's true or not, perceived to be stressed, overwhelmed, undermined, resiliency is low, then we look for alleviation. We don't look for transformation. We look for alleviation. So it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's porn, it's gambling. It's what kicks the dopamine off, and it just gives me that short-term hit. So I feel a little bit different to my normal, whatever it is, routine or regimen that's in play. Now, I think that's an issue that when we start talking about it, we need to talk about that. Perhaps not in detail today, we might. It is this whole assumption that grown-ups get to do whatever they want to make themselves feel better. Damn the consequences. Now, when it comes to that position, it's okay if you're a single adult living your own life, and you use your boundary terms, consenting with someone else who agrees with your value system, whatever that may be, and you can bounce off each other. But when you're bringing another human being into that setting, a vulnerable child, which you are responsible for instilling in, whatever's caught and taught is going to be caught and taught primarily from you and your setting. So all of a sudden, this I'm being a grown-up, I'm getting to do adult things, becomes harmful and unnecessarily harmful. Now, you've talked about, again, we'll keep going down this road, but did at any point, now obviously porn hits and puberty hits and we know what happens there, and if you're aware of the research on this, and you may be, and so therefore correct my horrors if they exist, Pjero, but there is research that I've been privy to that talks about the adolescent brain, particularly for males, that the male unit at puberty has up to 800 times more testosterone running around the system than any other time in their life. But that testosterone, even though it's a sex drive hormone for both males and females, is not actually for that purpose at that age. It's for building blocks for the masculinity of that young man as he grows. But if that is harnessed, right, and this is what's interesting, what the science tells us, and again, I'm happy to be corrected on this, what the science tells us is that when that pubescent male looks at porn, the actual eye releases what's not correct. The language I'm going to use is for parallel purposes. It releases like a little shot of cocaine. And that cocaine goes, and it's this kind of, and the pupils dilate, and that cocaine says, I've been stimulated. So it goes looking for the resource to harness to fulfill that stimulation, which is testosterone. So you can imagine where this this hunger hits this testosterone at 800 times more. It lights up the young man like unbelievably. And he's got to contend with that. And if he hasn't got a value system or behavioral capacities in play to understand and manage that, that becomes a dictator. That becomes a vehicle which is very strong, very powerful. So that's interesting. So and alcohol and other drugs can do similarly. But in your experience, is that something that you connect with?
That's something that I learnt. So obviously after time, I learnt all of that. Everything that you just brought up, I learnt that after time. So if I go back, to my little brain, what was it? It was the excitement. It was the joy. It was the bodily sensations of a hard on. It was the excitement. It was the fantasy. It was everything that goes along with it. Everything. Because for me, I'm not sure about anyone else in the audience might feel the same, but for me, it was the fantasy. So like when I talk about it like that, the fantasy, it was the storyline for me. It wasn't actually the ejaculation, right? It wasn't the masturbation. It was the storyline. And we've seen 50 Shades of Grey with there's plenty of smut books you can go and read. But for me, if I was to sit down and write a book right now, I'd like to think that I'd write a bestseller because of the fantasy that I can produce in the drop of a hat. That's what it was for me. So when you say, like how was it similar to my experience? That's probably how my body harnessed it. Is that the cocaine hit that you talk about? We talk about it. It's very similar to adrenaline, not cortisol adrenaline, but like epinephrine, right? It's another form of it, right? So you get this shot, you get this excitement. People might even try and label it dopamine, but it's not dopamine. It's actually more intense than dopamine, right? So you get this shot,
correct?
It looks for it, and it's like the stimulation, yes, exactly, of the testosterone. It's 800 times, if not more, in some young men and women. It's more intense, so therefore you find it, and then not only that, you're ready to go like another hour later. Not like a couple of hours. Like as you get older, you're like, oh, I just need a little bit of a reset. I don't know about anybody else, but like the intensity is so much, and it's like I want that again and again and again and again. And realistically, the real life world is kind of boring. So our brain creates those fantasies. So that's what it was for me. Then it was walking around down the street. It was little images of women. It was this, it was that. It was elderly women. It was young women. And I was between the ages of 14 when I really started to understand it. So I was just creating fantasies left, right, and center. And then all of a sudden, like I watched my parents in this context. I watched my parents who were quite friendly people. So they would talk to the checkout people. They would say good day to everyone. They would remember people's. My mum taught me, don't ever worry about not remembering someone's name. As long as you remember their face and you say hello, is fine. So then all of a sudden for me, it became, because of the fantasies of what I was watching, it became like this, let's call it a verbal drug of trying to pick someone up. So then all of a sudden that was part of the joy. You could just go down the street and just go, hey, are you having a lovely day? What time do you finish work? Oh, that's really good of you. Oh, wow, your hair looks nice. And this might be coming across as a compliment, but it's what story you're making up in here.
On that. Yeah. Interesting. Yep. And that, it's all consuming. And a lot of guys that may be confronting this, or have confronted this, if you don't have another narrative in play, then to inform that, it could be quite overwhelming and it could be quite distressing. And the need to talk about that and work it through and understand boundaries and all the things that we're talking about today is a key issue in that. But this is, again, in a culture where we have allowed, and not just allowed, we have promoted definitely the imagery. It's not just about women wearing whatever they want to wear. That's not even an issue. It's about the idea that sexual acts can be accessed publicly, pretty much anywhere you want, anytime you want on their devices. And that's informing young people, young men and young women, about what relationships look like, all that sort of stuff. But what I want to talk about the substance issue too, because in the world today, there are three. I'm just digressing for a moment here. Yep, Pjero, for the listeners. Today, there are three big illicit trades. The arms trade, illicit arms trade, is huge. But the other two trades are sex trafficking, human trafficking, and substance use. And substance use and human trafficking often top the list, right? Now, when those two go together, substance use and sex trafficking, we speak of this in our seminars quite at length, and it's horrendous. I won't go there today because time will not permit that. But this is horrendous. Now, when it comes to sexual proclivities and sexual acting out, and the pornography certainly gives young people way too many and too distorted impressions. But when you add substances like alcohol, we know with alcohol for young women particularly, because when young men drink alcohol excessively, testosterone levels can stay the same or lower. They can, when you get older men drink too much, they're what's called brewer's droop. They can't get it up. But for young men, it generally doesn't work that much. But when women drink alcohol, it's interesting, it works differently on them. It actually increases their testosterone. So their sex drive and flirtation may begin to express itself, not after sex, not chasing it, not trying to be flirtatious, but that's what it does to their biochemically. So these are just physiological facts. It's nothing to do with gender, issues. It's just physiological realities of the two different genders. Now, it's interesting when you got that in play. What happens when you add substances to this? And did that become part of your journey as an early age? Did you start drinking or taking drugs before you were 18, or did that just happen later on?
I trafficked it. I used to do drug runs.
What led to that?
The simple answer, I just got more sex. Like literally. So this is an area that I've never really delved down. I didn't take it myself. I'm a non-drinker, so I'm not a huge, so for your audience in this context, I don't fit in your realm, guys, of drugs and alcohol, but I trafficked it, so I would give it to people, so then I would get it. So I used it to my advantage. So when you ask me, how was it implemented for me? I saw it as a catalyst to get more. So any girl that wanted drugs, I could get the drugs. Any girl that wanted alcohol, and we're not talking. Let's make one thing really clear here: it had nothing to do with age. It was nothing to do with underage. Everyone was already of age. When this kicked in for me, it was around about the age of 18, 19, 20. Especially, there was a huge part of it when I travelled overseas. So if we jump forward until I was 24, I travelled overseas. I used a lot of it over there to aid my fascination to get more, especially in Amsterdam. I'll be fair about that. It was amazing. I mean, and it was accessible. So therefore, even in England, I was living in England. It was accessible. I bought it. I got it. I acquired it from wherever I could to pass it on to girls that wanted it.
Perfect. The honesty there is really important, because I think there is a pursuit, then there is a predatorial nature, then there is a predacious, vicious component. Now, obviously, you didn't graduate into the latter, which is really common. But then when you got introduced psychotropic toxins into the world of sex and pornography, you've got distortions and perversions. Now, the word perversion has now lost all meaning, because what's perverted? Who says that's not good? Who says that's, what I do is okay with me? And so if I can convince someone to engage in an act, supposedly willingly, with the aid of a substance, then I'm not being predacious. I'm simply, mutually fulfilling desires. And we're helping each other on the way through. Now, we're now seeing, because of some of this issue that's obviously now exploding, and everything from high-end cannabis, obviously crystal meth, is the sex drug, cocaine, the stimulants, MDMA. They all act in this space and really generate sexual activity. Now we've got there's a new term that's evolved in the last 7 or 8 years called chemsex, which is basically people cannot have sex without substances. It's virtually impossible. In fact, now we've got some groups and even some educators, really disturbingly, and educators in the high school sector, this has actually crept in, who advocate substance use for sexual experimentation. Now, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, but it's in some context. Yes, it's been discovered and outed recently. And so the young people are told, look, it's all part of developing and growing up. And here's a bit of pornography to give you some idea. And by the way, these stimulants can help with the sexual experience and sexual enhancement. This is where we've gone. And this is where the ultimate boundary breaching is happening. We've got children now actually actively being predated upon by a system that's run by so-called grown-ups who have declared there are no perversions, there are no distortions, there are only what I can get away with. And at what point does the line get drawn? A boundary is set. Now, hang on a minute. I've let you in because I have not understood that I have a boundary, because that boundary was robbed of me by the environment I'm in and the chemicals that I've been introduced to. Now, when you've got these kind of factors in play, we're talking about really serious problem. And young people particularly don't get this if they're not exposed to the realities of this. Tell us about, I don't want to go down, follow that path down what went on, because I get it. People go party, you get party favours. It's the whole party favours line. We go, let's have a good time. Hey, you got some gear? Let's have some gear. Let's get it on, babe. Whatever. Yeah. And it's all supposedly mutual, supposedly consensual. And some of the outcomes of that could be quite disturbing. But can you, if you are able to, mate, and I don't want to put you in a sticky situation, at what point were you undone by this? Because obviously there was a moment where obviously pornography has informed the way you see women, the way you engage with sex, and then obviously substance use is now a part of that journey. And what was the wake-up moment? What was the moment of the catalyst that's where this is toxic, this is bad, this has got to end? What was that moment for you? Are you able to share that?
Okay, so let's get some years in the right place here. So 24 was when I travelled overseas. There was 12 months of that. Experienced and experimented a lot while I was overseas. I tried some drugs and I tried some alcohol, but it never set stone for me, because I had that fear of being out of control. So I actually liked being in control, and that was probably a part of it as well, because then I could control, right? I could control
that. Yep.
Right. Yep. So then after that, so I was 25. I can't do the numbers in my head right now, but let's say I get back to Australia. I then worked Melbourne. I'm just trying to put a few things back here together. It was about when I was 28, I found someone to actually partner with. So then I found, I guess you could call it love. So fast forward to 30, the actual moment was when I was about to, like my partner, where we're about to have my son. So the realization of, holy shit, I better stop and I better get some help, was actually like within months of having my son.
Not an uncommon experience. In fact, I would argue, I was speaking to a lot of young men. I'm a grandfather myself. I've got 4 grandkids. So I know a lot of young men that have and living life. Life is large. It's all good. I've had boundaries breached. I'll breach some boundaries. It's fantastic. It's kind of it's part of the game. I know what to expect. I know that I'm breaching boundaries, and boundaries are going to be breached. You're kind of in that trade-off. It's kind of this unspoken rule. It's poor impulse control, self-gratification, externalizing blame. All those mechanisms come into play, and we're all doing it to each other. So it kind of this bizarre, corrupted, perverted, mutual gratification
play game.
we know is harming us, but all of a sudden I brought a young person into this world, this little life that relies completely on me for understanding boundaries, developing resilience, growing them to be all that they can be. And all of a sudden, that mirror, that potential for harm and failure versus potential and growth, it's just. I'm not getting. So, what did you actually do? What that was the catalytic moment.
Yep.
So what was the process?
Yeah, that was when I immediately turned to therapy, and I immediately turned to understanding myself. So that's when I just got course after course. I just jumped on, university.com. I started to enroll into courses. I want to understand what is an addiction. What is this? What is counseling? What is therapy? Like, how can I therapize myself? I went to therapy myself. I had conversations. I went and done NLP courses so that I could understand, all right, do I have any underlying narratives that I need to work on? Like, this was all before I was educated. So I was just looking for answers to why do I want it? Like, why am I per se talking to this? And I'm now my son's next to me now, so I'm going to change my language a little bit on purpose. You obviously understand that one, right? So for the sake of the conversation, everybody's going to know what I'm talking about, right? But I'm talking to a person over there, but I'm still texting and doing other stuff over here to this person. And then I'm also watching this over here to this person. So when I started to put all that together in my own head, I'm like, why am I like this? Like, I started to question, why am I like this? How come I can watch, you can watch those movies on TV and it's like they just got one person. They just want to beg to be with one person. And I thought to myself, why is one not enough? Why not? Why do I have to be any different? So that's when I engaged into therapy. I wanted to understand it. What are these stories? Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. How often did you do it? I mean, if we backtrack a little bit, part of the fun that it was me and my schoolmates would watch it after school and have a laugh about it.
Yep.
So it wasn't even just me now. Like, I introduced my friends to it, right? And I didn't know the harm that it could cause. We've had a few conversations about it. So I wanted to understand why. Why have I got this excitement about it? Why me? I just wanted to understand why. So delved into counselling, therapy, my own form of psychology, did as much study as I could, and then a lot of things started to pop up around it. So my wife at the time, then got postnatal depression. So then while I was studying about addiction and going through my own stuff, I now needed to support her. I needed to understand that. My father at the same time as well. So before I even got to chat with my father about all this serious stuff that I started to learn about myself, he started getting age-old depression. Now, my father was a Croatian, so he escaped from Yugoslavia, and this has got to do with part of the story. He escaped from Yugoslavia at the age of 7. He tried to jump in a tin boat with his best mate to escape Yugoslavia during Bosnian War and all that kind of stuff. He was picked up by a boat. He was actually picked up by the military boat that was in between on the Adriatic Sea there. They took him over to Italy, and then when he grew up, when he was old enough, he actually got a one-way ticket to Melbourne. That's how he came to Australia. So he didn't have much of an upbringing. He was just a tough European. So everything that I went through was do this, do that, be tough, don't answer back, don't just, I used to get full on, all the time and things like that. So when I put all this story together, I was then starting to understand what depression was and how the brain worked there. I started to understand what age-old depression was. And then all of a sudden, I guess you could say I turned the addiction inside out, and then I started to want to understand more about the brain. So all I did was move that addiction from here to over there. Now, did it disappear completely? It actually took me, and this is for the sake of the story so that we know how it went.
Right.
It actually took me to about 35 when I actually confessed to my wife at the time. So she didn't even know.
Yep.
So when you ask me what was the turning points, these are all the little turning points. And by the time I understood it, and by the time I understood it more for myself, and I understood like what I was doing to my own body, and that I wanted to protect my kids from it, I confessed at the age of 35 to her, and that was then the catalyst for us having our own problem.
My different money.
Sure. Yeah, it's a difficult one. And one of the things about being anything that's in the dark fosters. When something's more to the light can be dealt with, and we understand that principally. But it's a difficult one, particularly for guys, because there's a whole bunch of pride issues, control issues, whatnot. And of course, our spouses, our partners, their reaction to that is different to ours. And there's a whole bunch, again, the psychology behind the response to a loved one who has a partner that's addicted to it, particularly pornography, because that reflects on, they believe it reflects on them specifically. So that creates a whole bunch of issues. But when the fact that you actually became aware, I think that's the journey of developing awareness was a really powerful one for you. You actually intentionally went after that. For a lot of people listening, that's kind of they're in that stage of, well, I may not go chasing that awareness lever, but some of the things you're talking about here is bringing it to the light, being accountable to someone. It may not be your loved one straight away, but being accountable, and then beginning to understand where that comes from, why that's in play, and developing skill sets and capacities to actually not manage it, but to deal with it, to transcend it, so you can move forward. Then to bring it to the relationship and say, this is what's been going on. Very, very powerful, of course. Having people around you to do that, and this is where we encourage people to get involved with good talking therapy environments, with trusted people. Professionals obviously very helpful, particularly for someone outside of a relationship. It's objective, it's very important, guys. We're not going to go into the prescriptive space here, but just to let you know, these are important issues. There is a way out of this. There is a journey out, and Pjero has talked about his journey. That's one, and it's a good one, but that doesn't have to be as intense. But it's certainly about developing awareness, creating capacity to shift away from that, which is actually undermining you as an individual and undermining those around you. And of course, substance use, gambling, porn, gaming, and again, substances are all impact the same part of the brain, basically, and all instruct the brain. And there's more going on than just brain biochemical responses. We know that. The mind is a complex and interactive arena. And the psyche, which is the soul as well, is another space that people often ignore. But psychology, by its very definition, is study of the soul, which is ironic. So it's more than brain and nervous system. There is behavior, there's values, there's belief systems. And going back to what you said earlier about stories, it's narratives. What narrative and what narrative have I bought into? What am I crafting and what's informing that? And when you've got that pornography fantasy narrative, that's the base narrative for a lot of activity, then that's what needs to be fed. Now, a lot of guys out there, and girls for that matter, women for that matter, are listening to this. This may be part of your world, and it's like, how do I shift this narrative? And Pjero has talked about some of what can be done, and we encourage you to pursue some of the avenues that he's spoken of, and certainly have those conversations. But it's prevention now is a key issue for us, because I want to just sort of, as we wind up, mate, I want to talk about some of your preventative measures. Obviously, you talk about recovery, rehabilitation, recalibration, and that's important. But what are some of the preventative key bits of advice, without giving away proprietary, monetized proprietary data? I don't want you to do that for free here, mate. But just what's some of the preventative things you've learned now as being a dad and going through what you've been through and experiencing a limited parenting environment because of your dad's obviously horrendous experience? What are some of the preventative mechanisms you can encourage men and women who are, maybe not mum and dads yet, but are wanting to be, those people that make society better? What are some of the things you could give them advice on?
Okay. Wow. There's so much in even just what you said. Like, you and I feel as if this conversation could go for hours and hours on end, right? And in multiple directions. So first of all, to share with the audience, like if you're sitting there thinking that some of the things that we've said are like challenging or whatnot, it is. And this is, we're only just one leaf on the top of a mountainous range. So don't think you're sitting there going, well, that kind of was, good story, you've transformed. Like there is so much behind it. So if you're listening to that, please reach out, ask for help and so forth. I just want to start with that. Okay.
Beautiful.
The most underrated form of therapy I can suggest. Number one, exposure therapy. You've got to be willing to be uncomfortable, to understand your narratives as well as your bodily sensations and your thoughts, your feelings, your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors. So this is straight out cognitive behavioral therapy. If people don't understand the hot cross bun theory, and you can just get that off the internet. If you don't understand the hot cross bun theory and how exposure therapy works, that's completely underrated. First of all, I just want to recommend that. The second thing is the only thing that is ever going to bring us to a level of self-awareness is through conflict, regardless. And more on a daily basis, people are becoming either afraid of conflict, afraid of confrontation, or what I like to call tension phobes. So here's a couple of quotes that I want you to write down if you're listening. You need tension to use intentionally to gain the right attention. Now, what do I mean by that? I believe through my study, my research, and my development, an addiction is an uncontrollable obsession to either give or get attention from something or someone. So that's that's my broad aspect of addiction. But when I'm giving you this information to share as a tip, it's like, how do I want you to use that? You have to walk into the fire. You can't think that standing on the outside and just working it out is going to be the answer. You have to go to someone who's either experienced what you've done or who has an understanding in it, that's willing to stand there. There's two things. The person's got to be willing to stand there and help you through it. That's one thing, because they might not be able to handle it. And the second thing is you've got to be willing to walk into it and go, what do I need from you? And I'm going to be really raw about this. If you don't find a therapist or a social worker or someone that can sit across the table from you and dead set you look in the eye and tell you, like, you are afraid of what and what is it, and get it out now, almost like, what do they call that? It's a possess. It's like it's possessing you. Something needs to come out of you and you need to get it out.
Correct. Yep, there it is. Yep. And I think this is, and then you're starting to move into some spaces that a lot of the culture is lost because, again, as we stated earlier, when words like perversion and distortion and bad or toxic, all this language is now seen as pejorative, and we certainly don't want to label people. And all behaviour is good behaviour until it hurts somebody else, and then we can't call it bad because I don't want to use a pejorative label. And this is what's happened. And unfortunately, the toxin continues to grow. The toxin continues to infect. The toxin continues to do what it does to you and those around you, because we do not live in isolation. And unfortunately, that toxicity, you hit the nail on the head. If you are not willing to be exposed, and this is one of the biggest problems, I want to rescue my sense of self. I want to be okay about what I do, regardless of how dysfunctional or broken or toxic it may be. I want to be okay. I was a great Nobel Prize-winning poet, T.S. Eliot. You said, it was a great quote, it covered a lot of issues here, certainly what we've been talking about, but you said, half the harm done in this world is done by people who want to be important. They don't mean to do harm. They're just caught up with the endless pursuit of trying to think well of themselves. And see, our inability to understand our identity and our significance leads us into places of pursuit of things that are unhelpful, or simply become hedonists. We're pleasure seekers because that's the only thing we can find a sense of gratification in. And of course, it doesn't gratify. It's the very nature of the animal. It just continues to roll on. And addiction is lust, if you like, lust out of control. It is insatiable. And that can be substances, gaming, gambling, pornography, whatever it is. Because what it's doing is it's trying to address core issues of your humanity using counterfeit measures. And as a result, we get caught in this maelstrom of dysfunction. And when we break out of that, we've got to go, well, okay, I'm free of the toxic environments, the toxic culture, the toxic performance dynamics that I've been involved. But what do I replace that with?
Yes.
The Gestaltian principles, displacement therapy, yes. It's what you put down is important, but not as important as what you take up.
What you pick up. Yep.
So that's the issue. And unfortunately, like you've said, until you come to the fire and you put down into the fire the stuff and expose it, so that's what I've been carrying, and then go, but now what can I take up? And that's the key issue. What am I going to take up, invest in, that's going to make me and those around me better?
No. There's a couple of things that you mentioned that they just bring up this, I guess you could almost say, the fire within me to share.
Sure.
Physical intensity that is out of your control. Physical intensity that's out of your control creates mental strength, which naturally increases emotional intelligence. So here's my suggestion. I'm just going to add one more to the suggestion for anyone out there. If these are the things that are holding you back, whether it be drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, porn, or even any other non-substance abuse. I even believe that people pleasing and imposter syndrome and self-sabotage is a form of addiction, right? Because you just get addicted from running away from the pain, right? So if you get hold of that, if you've got that, if you're listening to this, I highly suggest you take part in some physical, intense exercise that's out of your control. Example, those Spartan races. Get a group of men and go and throw yourself in the deep end. BJJ, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, karate, boxing. Go and take part in something that is out of your control, that is going to give you almost like a 2x4 in the face to go, oh my God, that's reality? Like, oh my God, that's real? Like I actually got physically punished for something? And I know that that's even going to sound so bad to some people, right? But even the fact that, this idea of physical punishment to our children has gone out the window. Like I said, there's plenty we could talk about, but physical, intense exercise that's out of your control naturally will increase your mental strength and increase emotional intelligence. So you've got to take part in something. We're a world that is way too fucking comfortable. We are way too comfortable. And at the moment, that's why we are not growing. Society as a whole is not growing. So everybody's way too comfortable getting, I'm allowed to do this. No, you're fucking not. Get over there and fucking do. Like, we don't have, there's no, I guess you could, I don't want to delve into it. There's no forced labour for anything anymore. There's no, you have to do this hard labour. There's none of that. If the apprentice is on the job site,
correct,
and they don't want to do it, they just turn around and say, I don't want to do it. If somebody in the office says you've got to go and sweep it,
And how was that?
we could talk for hours, but that plays into everything we're talking about up here.
Yeah.
It's just a cascading effect. It's a domino effect. It's a ripple effect, however you want to put it. There's got to be huge changes, and we're already starting doing it. You and I in both our different realms. There are plenty of other people out there that are doing these things, and we have to provide these environments where it's educated in a way that it's like, I want you to do that hard thing because that's going to be better over here, but I'll be there with you. So you're not alone. I'll help you through it. So go and seek advice, seek help. There's a better life out there waiting for you. You just got to go and take the first step.
Really important insights from Pjero. And I think the advice, again, there's a lot going on here, a lot to be said, that could have been explored. But the advice given today, those gems at the end are really important. Again, key issues. bring it out of the dark space. And you got to call stuff for what it is. This business of everybody's okay with everything and we're all okay and everything, there's nothing wrong or bad or dysfunctional. The fact is, it is. And we've just seen today and heard today from someone with a real honest take on this, who's someone who's battled this space, and what addictions can do. Substance use, porn, gambling, they can all do to you and those around you is horrendous. And the need to step away from that, step out of that, but more importantly, step into something more productive, more effective, more meaningful, more substantive is really, really important. And today we've heard that from Pjero, and I really encourage you to check out some of the ideas and thoughts that have been offered today and explore that yourself. What Pjero did was actually pursue and develop awareness. So we encourage you to do that as well. Look, it's been great having you here again on the Unnecessary Harm podcast. And until next time, if you haven't already subscribed, please do so online on LinkedIn to get your newsletter and update when these episodes are released. But until next time, avoid the unnecessary harm and be someone who makes a difference. Until then, bye.
As we wrap up today's session, remember, each step towards understanding is a step away from unnecessary harm. We're here to empower, inspire, and pave the way for optimal well-being. Stay resilient, stay informed, and continue being the change your community needs. Thank you for joining us at the Unnecessary Harm Podcast. Until next time, take care and keep pushing forward.